Let me kick off the national webinar of skilling in nation building. My name is Jim Verghese. I'm the Executive Director, Springfield City Group, but in my other hats as with the Australia-India Business Council and Trade Investment Queensland, I have a very passionate interest on the importance of skilling in nation building. Before I commence the proceedings today, I should just like to let all our registrants know if they could switch off to mute and put their video off throughout this webinar. And if our speakers and panelists could mute but keep their video on during the session. So let me now commence our proceedings for this webinar. And can I start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land we have gathered on today in every part of our nation. I pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, traditions, the culture and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples across our nation. Thank you. I would like now to chiefly just put a bit of context to what we're doing today, and that is that right at this point we're celebrating the end of National Skills Week, and it's great that the Springfield City Group and the Springfield Jobs Committee are joining together in this historic webinar on the importance of skilling nation building today. In this post-COVID world, we need strong leadership in skilling and training as we prepare for an uncertain future into the 2020s. A strong vet sector is critical to our economy and will help prepare Australia for the workforce opportunities of today and tomorrow. We're really fortunate today to have Senator the Honourable Michaelia Cash, the Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business with us today, Bernard Salt, a social demographer, Donna Bonney, the CEO of Martyr Education, Catherine O'Sullivan, the CEO of RMIT Training, Rhys Banks, the CEO of Regional Development Australia Ipswich and Westmoreton, and Chair of Springfield Regional Jobs Committee, Steve Elston, the Chairman of IoT Skills Australia, and Brett Kinane, the General Manager, Southwest Region, TAFE Queensland. I guess as by way of intro to this webinar, today we are going to discuss the importance of skilling nation building in a post-COVID-19 world. Are we entering into a new normal? What will a post-COVID-19 solution for Australia look like? How will we continue to thrive and live with the threat of contagion? Many of you are joining us online today as you work from home, and I pay my particular commiserations to my colleagues in Victoria who are working through that contagion and the restrictions. We have the challenge that we in Australia must reskill or upskill to fill the jobs on the other side of this COVID-19 crisis. We're fortunate this afternoon that we have a case study. This includes the innovative use of new data sources and advanced data analytical techniques to provide accurate and comprehensive data on jobs and skill gaps. This is a good example of post-19 city in the making. And in this context, I should like to thank the Springfield City Group, which is one of our great nation building projects in Australia, and the Springfield Regional Jobs Committee for co-hosting today's event. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Senator the Honourable Michaelia Cash. She's the Minister for Employment, Skills, Small and Family Business, and of course, she's also the Senator for Western Australia. Well known, and really looking forward, Minister, to your speech. Over to you.
Look, thank you so much, Jim, and it is just fabulous to join you here today. I'm in the great state of Western Australia, so a big shout out to anyone joining us from Perth. But in particular, can I acknowledge my fellow panellists and to Bernard Salt. Bernard, it is fantastic to see you. Bernard and I have done a lot of work together over the years, and I have to say the first time we sat down a number of years ago, I mean, Bernard's insight into the labour market is without a doubt second to none. So Bernard, really looking forward to seeing what you have to say today. Can I also acknowledge though the reason that I'm able to participate today, and that is my very good friend, and I think one of the most outstanding senators your state in Queensland has ever given to the Senate, and that is, of course, Senator Paul Scar. When Paul approached me a few weeks ago, he said to me, Michaelia, I really need you to spend some time with the people of Springfield. I know that he, as you would all know, has just moved his office to Springfield, and as he said to me, Springfield and what it is represents all that is great about Australia, and it represents the entrepreneurial vision that Australia is going to need now more than ever, and in particular, Jim, to pick up your comments as we emerge from COVID-19. And I have to say, when I went online and I did look at the Springfield, community, etc., I was blown away, absolutely blown away by what you've achieved. 43,000 people have already decided to make their home there. And over the next decade, you're looking at relocating around 100,000 people. That's what Australia needs. Vision, entrepreneurial spirit, because that is how we build our nation. But also, Jim, a celebration of National Skills Week. And I think in 2020, now more than ever, the focus for all of us needs to be on skills. And I've made a promise to Senator Scar that as soon as I can, and we're all subject to restrictions at the moment, I look forward to coming to Springfield and saying hello to as many of you as possible. Can I just acknowledge, though, the work of the Springfield City Group and the Springfield Regional Jobs Committee for organising today's event, but also your commitment to training and skills investment in your region. I've got your report in front of me, and I just want to read out the introduction, the first para. A Springfield Skills Alliance Board has been formed to provide strategic and operational leadership, as well as insight into a place-based approach to skills investment. I can't agree with you more, and I know that Bernard Salt will be delighted to hear that, because that is what Bernard has been talking about now for so many years. You cannot have a one-size-fits-all approach to skills investment in Australia. I come from the state of Western Australia. I am talking to people in Queensland. And whilst, yes, we have similar states in terms of a mining and resources-based economy, we're also fundamentally different. And that is why, to read your report, but to look at that commitment to training and skills.
Catherine, how come I can't get volume? It's Michaela speaking.
I'm just
Hi,
a little
sorry.
bit.
Can everyone please ensure they're on mute?
Continue, Minister. That's fine.
Thank you. So no. That's the beauty of technology. Hey, when it works, it's great. But we get to just work through the slight issues at the same time. So I just wanted to sort of set the scene there that everything you were doing and everything that the Springfield City Group and the Springfield Regional Jobs Committee is doing, can I assure you, and Paul Scar and I have spoken about this, it aligns exactly with where the government is going. As you know, we talked to the last election, a $585 million commitment to reform our skills system. COVID-19 has now seen us literally supercharge that commitment. Why? Because we need to now ensure that we train people for the jobs that will emerge out of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think, as we've all rightly recognised, they are not going to be the same jobs that have been lost. The post-COVID-19 economy is going to be fundamentally different. And Jim, to pick up what you said, that ensures that we have to have the policy settings right in terms of giving people who've been in the workforce their entire life, whether that's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, and in some case, unfortunately, over that period of time the ability to upskill, to reskill, and move into new employment. But what that means when we look at vocational education and training in Australia is that it does need fundamental reform. What we now need is to ensure that the VET system is responsive and adaptable as the training system that can meet both the needs, not just of the learners, but of employers. Because if we don't have a system that responds to what employers are telling us they need, we are not going to be successful. And that is why when the government talks about a training system that has industry at the heart of it, that is exactly what we mean. Many of you will have heard me say in previous speeches over a number of years now, governments don't create jobs, employers do. You are the job creators of Australia. What the government's role is to put in place the policy framework that you can lever off to prosper and grow and then create more jobs. And certainly we've heard you loud and clearly. And again, I go back to, Bernard Salt and the work he has done now for so many years. The VET system was not keeping up with what employers and industry were telling us you needed. And that is why, as a government, I'm very proud to be leading the charge in terms of ensuring that vocational education and training in Australia, which is critical to the national economy and ensuring our future prosperity, but it is actually now boosting that skilled capacity of our workforce. So in terms of what we are doing, I just want to quickly take you through it because, as you know, it is fundamental reform. And in fact, this year alone, the government will invest over $6.5 billion in vocational education and training in Australia. It is actually on record now the biggest investment of any government. As you know, when the Prime Minister addressed the National Press Club some time ago now, he prioritised skills development as a key part of our job maker strategy. Not in the short term. This is now fundamental, structural and long-term reform that Australia requires. As you know, we've also put in place a $2.8 billion wage subsidy for apprentices and trainees. So important when we look at that pipeline of workers that we are going to need. Who are the first people to go in an economic downturn? Apprentices and trainees. Who are the people we actually need to focus on keeping on the job for very obvious reasons? Apprentices and trainees. And that is why we took that decision as a government to implement the wage subsidy. But I think even more pleasingly, we announced the $1 billion job trainer fund. $500,000 from the Commonwealth, matched dollar for dollar by the states and territories. I am very pleased to be able to say we've already launched the ACT and the South Australian agreements. I look forward to shortly launching the Western Australian, the Northern Territory and the New South Wales and the Tasmanians. And we're just still working through with the Queensland and the Victorian governments. But every single jurisdiction signed up to the job trainer agreement. Why? Because we know that we need to create additional places in our training system. This will create an additional 340,000 places. But the key to these places is this: in areas of actual labour market demand. Bernard knows well, there's no point in creating places in a system if you are not actually ensuring that the training that I do is going to get me into a job. What has COVID-19 shown us? It's that we need to work with the states and territories on an individual basis, which is what this seminar today is all about, an individual basis to look at what the individual labour markets are telling us and then respond accordingly to that. Just in terms of job trainer, one of the requirements to sign up to job trainer, and this is where the fundamental reform to the vet sector comes in. You had to sign up to, as a jurisdiction, the heads of agreement for skills reform. We are formally saying goodbye to the National Agreement on Skills and Workforce Development, the outdated funding agreement that was not ensuring that our system kept pace with industry. Every jurisdiction will now work with me over the next 12 months to put in place a new funding agreement, and the conditionality is this. You had to agree as a jurisdiction to immediate reforms to improve the quality and relevance of vocational education and training, and to an approach and priorities for a new national skills agreement. As I look at the panel today, you've all been around a long time, and I have to say you have asked for this for a long time, and I am pleased to be the minister who I promise you will deliver this to you. Jim, very, very quickly, one of the reasons I'm absolutely delighted with what we're all discussing today is because it is skills investment and development on a regional level, responding, as I said, to the needs of a particular region as opposed to a one-size-fits-all approach. We've set up, as you know, the National Skills Commission. It's been formally legislated. It is led by Adam Boyton. Many of you will know Adam Boyton from former lives. The reason we set up the National Skills Commission is this. And again, I hate to harp on discussions that Bernard Salt and I have had in the past, but again, going back years now to when Bernard and I first sat down, and I was stunned when Bernard took me through the fact that labour market testing and analysis in Australia was all over the place. Each state and territory did it on their own terms. There was no consistent labour market analysis, and I listened carefully to that, and ultimately that is why we've set up the National Skills Commission, because you need expert advice and national leadership on the Australian labour market, and in particular when it comes to current and future skills needs and workforce development issues. We are now going to get this right. And Jim, if I can offer a conversation, if anyone here would like a conversation with our National Skills Commissioner, Adam Boyton, I'm more than happy to make that introduction to you. Why is this work so important? Because the work that Adam has already done in a very short period of time, working with the individual jurisdictions across Australia, has already identified 25 emerging occupations that can offer a pathway for those wanting to reskill or find new employment. Let me give you a quick example. These are new occupations and we need to ensure the training system is responding to them. Nurse liaisons who can help patients and their families navigate their way through our health system. Logistic analysts, helping our burgeoning logistics sector to respond to challenges such as the rapid increase in home deliveries. This better skills analysis by Adam Boyton and the National Skills Commission is now going to allow education providers to offer vet courses tailored to the current and future workforce needs of employers. And again, just in closing, that is why I think today's seminar is just so important, but I also congratulate you for being at the forefront of where we all need to be, and that is forecasting the skills needs for your own community. And that just gives you sort of a brief overview of where the government's at. I'm known for my passion. I'm incredibly passionate about this portfolio. I promise you, we will deliver to you a vocational education and training system in Australia that works for both employers and industry, as well as the learners, because that is where our economic prosperity going forward actually lies. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you so much, Minister. That was a very inspiring and forward-looking address on where skilling lies, and particularly the $6.5 billion investment, the job trainer, the agreements, the individual focus, the regional focus. There's a lot of really exciting food for thought there. And also thank you for Senator Scarr's support. And I can tell you that the owners of Springfield are are really up there, already revving up to resuscitate the economy of Queensland and Australia in education, health and technology. So thank you so much, and
My
we look
pleasure, Jim.
forward to
Thank
your
you.
visit to Springfield. I'd like now to introduce our next speaker, who the Minister spoke very highly of, and that, of course, is Bernard Salt, author, demographer, and columnist with the Australian and the Herald Sun newspaper. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Bernard. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Jim, for that introduction. And thanks also to the Minister for reminding everyone how many years I have been doing this kind of analysis. Thank you, Minister. But it is also correct. I love the passion and I love the commitment. I think we're all patriots. We all want to see and build a better Australia. And there is no doubt that that skills is an important part of that. Let me just share with you some key slides, I think, that will drive home this point, the importance of skills in Australia. It's not just skills, but it's also the attributes, the attitudes, and also something else the Minister mentioned very early on, and that is the requirement for entrepreneurship. You cannot have the jobs of tomorrow unless you have the businesses of tomorrow as well. So let's start by looking at the big picture and look at the how Australia fared prior to the coronavirus. This is the gross domestic product of the 15 largest economies on earth in 2019, just before the coronavirus hit. And first, your eye will go directly to number 14. We are only 25 or 26 million people, but we are effectively the 14th largest economic force on the planet, with around about $1,400 billion US in GDP every year. It's going to be down a bit, of course, in 2020, but as will many other countries as well. And there's the US at about $22,000 billion, China at about 60% of the American economy. In the year 2000, it was barely at 10%. And I suppose my point here is that there is no country above Australia on this list that has a lesser population. We are really rich per capita. We have the capacity to invest in education and skills, perhaps more so than any other country, certainly on this list. We should be investing more per capita as a consequence of this sort of ranking. Let's have a look at the straight demographics. I want to show you a chart. I actually published this in the Australian newspaper on Saturday, where I looked at the first 5 years of the 2020s, 2020 to 25 years, 2025, and it shows the number of people added to the Australian continent by single year of age, from 0 on the left through to 100 on the right. And the point here is to see the surge points. And there is quite a surge point between 15 and 24, which I would say is the key learning, skilling, training phase in the life cycle. And if you look at the number added over that 5-year period, it is around about 250,000 extra people in that training, skilling stage of the life cycle. That is actually up 60% on the preceding 5 years. So whatever schools, whatever vocational training, whatever university skills or facilities we've had, we will need to lift the bar. It's probably going to offset to some degree a diminution in overseas students perhaps, but there is going to be a far greater surge in domestic people moving into that skilling stage of the life cycle. It actually comes about because of a mini baby boom about 15 years ago, when the Treasurer of Australia at the time suggested everyone have one for the country. Well, Australians responded enthusiastically to that encouragement, and you could see that baby boom working its way through. They've come through primary school, junior secondary school, the next 5 years, late secondary school, into technical and training and further education, in fact. And of course, this highlights the link between education, skills and prosperity. These figures are taken from the 2016 census, and it's so telling. I think every parent, every school teacher should be showcasing this information to young people. It shows the amount of income someone can earn across the life cycle with a Year 9 education. And you can see it tops out at maybe high 30s, $40,000 per year at that time. If you just add one more year of training, one more year at school, you can see that your prospects are improved. And this, of course, is taken from a census of 25 million people, and you can actually just pull out people who have completed Year 10 and plot their income, and you can see that one more year at school and you get so much more income right throughout your life cycle. What if you were to complete a trade certificate, vocational training? Your prospects in life, and to be fair, your contribution, your financial contribution to the nation, even in terms of tax, is increased over that time frame. You can see the benefit, the dividend of investing your time, your effort in skilling and education. What if you were to go to university and just get a Bachelor of Arts? There's nothing wrong with a Bachelor of Arts. I had a Bachelor of Arts, and you can see a significant difference if you were to go to university. What if you were to do a postgraduate diploma education degree? And you can see a significant increase. Interestingly, there is no benefit in doing a postgraduate degree in your 20s. It's not until your early 30s that you actually see the financial benefit of that. But this chart shows for putting time, effort, application, discipline, and commitment into that training phase of the life cycle, 15 to 24, at school, at university, at trade school. Look what impact it can have right across your life cycle. Everyone in that age group should be looking at this chart. Let's have a look at some of the jobs on offer on the Australian continent. Again, this is taken from the census. The boffins in Canberra, the Australian Bureau of Statistics, classify everyone's job from barista through to Prime Minister, in fact, to one of 5 skill sets, where number 1 requires a lot of university education, so doctor, engineer, midwife, and job number 5, skill level number 5, requires no immediate training at all. You can learn on the job, so it might be a cafe worker or a shop assistant, something like that. And then you can divide up every job in Australia on this basis. And you can see the number of jobs in 2016 or whatever it is. And you can see the share, 5 jobs, so maybe 20% each of each sector you would expect. Here is the rate of growth over the 5 years to between the last 2 censuses. It's the percentage rate of growth that is very telling. What this chart is showing is that 46%, almost half the jobs created between the last 2 censuses, were in skill level 1 occupations. The best thing you can do for your kids is to give them either a university education or technical training. The future belongs to the skilled. That is what this is saying. If you look at skill level number 5, that is no skills, no training at all, you can see actually that job category is also increasing, as is skill level number 4, the barista set, the cafe worker, that sort of thing. And if you look at the middle, you can see that middle Australia job growth has almost flatlined. This is the hollowing out of the skill set across the Australian economy. Now, there is nothing particularly bad about starting off at the bottom. And I will say quite happily and proudly that I washed dishes at university and did all sorts of jobs because I benefited from a thing called social mobility. In the 80s and 90s and the 2000s, the contract, the social contract of Australia was work hard and you can progress. If you have this hollowing out and if you start off with no skills and you learn and you apply yourself, you can be rewarded in Australia. What we actually need is not just a good system of technical training and skilling, but also this framework of social aspiration and social mobility. If we don't offer social mobility, then this system, I think, would not deliver the kind of Australia, the kind of opportunities in Australia that we want to offer the next generation. Let's bring it back to the pandemic. And a fascinating data set was released by the ABS. I think all their data sets are fascinating, of course, was released at the end of June. where they did an audit effectively of 430 occupations comprising the Australian workforce at the 20th of May. So at the end of the first wave, I suppose. And I compared the number of workers in those 430 occupations at the 20th of May with their preceding audit, which was the 20th of February. So over those 3 months, you could identify which occupations decreased the most. Over the first 3 months of the pandemic, we lost 106,000 waiters, 44,000 baristas, 35,000 kitchen hands lost their jobs. In fact, 94,000 shop assistants lost their jobs, fitness instructors, beauty therapists, and travel agents all lost their jobs. All of this was very well documented throughout the media. It was where the pain was mostly felt. But I'm fascinating by the other end of this spreadsheet, this ranking. If all of these people lost their job, were there any jobs actually that burgeoned, that boomed over this time frame? And if you go right down to the bottom of that spreadsheet, you can see them sitting there: green shoots, hot spots, jobs in demand, skills in demand, even during a pandemic, especially during a pandemic. And here they are. Logistics. In fact, I think the Minister mentioned them: transportation, distribution, warehousing, logistics. We were hoarding everything, but also we shifted our behaviour. If shops shut, they went online, and so fulfilment centres became important. And you can see that the 17,000 procurement managers were hired in net terms between February and May. And then the second category of job growth, green shoots, hotspots, was in technology, and especially multimedia managers and web page designers. They were up 212%, 11,000 jobs added. Clearly the geeks are hot during the pandemic. And you can see that it makes sense. If you can't go to a shop and it's all online, then business, all of the small businesses went straight to consultants, contractors, people with that skill set to help them get online. And you can see all of the skills required. Health and wellness, of course. 8,000 GPs re-entered the workforce. They might have been retired or on family leave, of course. Medical laboratory technicians. Someone has to evaluate those coronavirus tests. And then ambulance officers as well. And then there was also a surge in the number of people employed in a range of agribusiness activities. And you think, well, that might be a response to the hoarding, but I also think that this is a response to the summer rains, the drought-breaking rains, the bushfire quelling rains that we had in January and February. And pleasingly, a lot of these jobs, of course, are in the regions. The regions have been doing it particularly tough from east to west in Australia over the last 4 or 5 years with drought, then the bushfires. They've only been lightly touched by the virus, of course. So they've largely avoided the virus. They've had rain, and the regions are booming. And in fact, it led me to talk about people leaving the cities and embracing the regions. In fact, I invented a new acronym for them. I call them the Vespers, the Virus Escapees Seeking Provincial Australia. So watch for the Vespers scootering out of the capital cities in search of lifestyle in the regions. All of these skills, of course, are in demand right here, right now, and will continue in the post-COVID world. So what can you say about all of this? First thing is that we as a nation should be investing in skills. We generate more income per capita than many other countries in the top 15 countries on earth by economic output. We've got the means. It's a matter of prioritising it. And then, of course, this extraordinary, clear, direct link between application between 15 and 24, securing the skills, getting the training, applying yourself, and then reaping the benefits for the entirety of your lifetime. That slide, I think, should be on every teenager's wall. Not sure that that's going to apply, but it should be. And then, of course, the hollowing out, the fact that you've got this polarisation of jobs. really highly technical, skilled jobs requiring university and technical training, and then a lot of low-skilled, unskilled type work. That system can work if there is social progression, social mobility, and we want that framework for society to encourage people, to allow people to move seamlessly and upskill, reskill, relocate, do whatever is required to improve your own circumstances and the circumstances of your family. And then finally, you come down to attributes, and this is the attribute of resilience and adaptability. No matter what the circumstances, what you really want is that mindset where even if there is a pandemic, even if there is a recession, even if there is a bushfire or a drought or whatever it is, it's a bit like a cork in stormy seas. You might be tossed and turned and even pulled under for a while. But adaptability and resilience gives you buoyancy, and you pop up and thrive no matter the circumstances. So adaptability, I call it fit-in ability. No matter what the circumstances, can you fit your skill sets in to the prevailing or ascendant opportunities? That's the mindset that we need. And then finally, this issue of entrepreneurship. For there to be opportunities, for there to be people to employ you, you need to actually encourage business growth. And small to medium business growth goes hand in hand, I think, with skill development. Putting all of this together, I think that Australia and Australians can actually deliver and rebuild a better Australia in the post-COVID world, one founded on skills, aspiration and entrepreneurship across the Australian continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernard, for a very comprehensive address. And so we now have a really excellent context with the Minister's address and with Bernard's very comprehensive presentation. With this backdrop, we now have a really distinguished panel. So let's now discuss the implications of our two keynote speeches. And let's kick off with Donna Bonney, who is the CEO of Marta. And all the profiles of our panelists are on the screens for you to look at. So let me kick off, Donna, with the first question. How has healthcare education and delivery changed for you and in your perspective?
Well, Jim, thankfully, we've slowly moved away from the old medical apprenticeship model of training. We used to refer to that as see one, do one, teach one. But this idea, I guess, of an all-knowing educator as the master and the learner as the apprentice has limited value in healthcare when we're all working towards a safe, patient-centred healthcare setting. So it's no longer appropriate to practice on patients, who'd have thought, and we also know that learning doesn't happen most effectively through osmosis. So modelling is very important, particularly in relation to behaviour and professionalism, but it's not enough to really facilitate that deeper, sustained acquisition of knowledge and skills. So in healthcare and at Marta in particular, we have moved away from very didactic, instructor-led training and into more experiential learning. So we use a lot of simulation, and obviously that's a technique used to replace real experiences with guided experiences in very realistic scenarios. And it's fully interactive, but it's I think the key point is it's done safely. And so we use simulation to teach certainly knowledge and skill acquisition, but also whole interdisciplinary team core competency, problem solving, communication, shared knowledge and skills, patient-centered practice, and the ability to work sort of collaboratively. It became really clear, I think, through COVID in particular in healthcare that knowledge and skill acquisition is one thing, but the ability to put it into practice under pressure and in settings with higher variation, that's another thing altogether. And again, that's where simulation really has come in as a much more effective way of building genuine capability. And our recent work outside of MATA, actually training health workers in aged and residential care settings, prove that this standard, online PPE and infection control training, or a compliance tick box approach, is just not sufficient in these unique settings and in these unique times that we find ourselves in healthcare at the moment. And so there are workforces that are much better served by face-to-face training and support to acquire those knowledge and skills, but the real key is being able to effectively apply them to their unique patient population and the variation across health. Because essentially, our ultimate goal in education and training in healthcare is to be able to maintain a sense of constant organisational readiness, and that's never really been more important than it is now in a COVID world.
So in the context of Minister Cash and Bernard Salt's address, do you expect any more changes in this post-COVID world or the new normal that we're looking at?
Yeah, well, I think the things that the Minister and Bernard have brought up are absolutely correct. I think broadly we're going to see workforce shortages in these rapidly ageing economies like ours, and that really is going to drive the need for automation and productivity enhancements. So for us, like many industries, that means digital skills and literacy. That's going to be essential for the future workforce, but also future learners. And I think, like many industries, healthcare is becoming increasingly digitised. We all need skills to be able to find and comprehend and critically evaluate that digital information. It's coming at speed, and there's a lot of it, so that we can make the best informed decisions. But I think Bernard's point around, as an employer, and outside of that technical knowledge and skills, the most important skills for our workforce, and certainly the ones that we are recruiting for, is knowing how to innovate, how to collaborate, being able to demonstrate critical thinking and problem-solving skills, and literally learning how to learn throughout your career, because the workforce and our organisation, we really need to be able to adapt to changes that are likely to be a feature of work in the future. COVID isn't the first or the last global pandemic, and for those of us that have been around a long time, there have been others, and we're certainly nowhere near through this one. So I think that those things Bernard mentioned around adaptability and resilience are really important skills in a post-COVID world.
Thanks very much for that, Donna. I'd like now to turn to Brett Kinane and give us that TAFE perspective. TAFE is a very critical role in training. So over to you, Brett. What role do you see TAFE playing in Queensland's economic recovery post-COVID?
Yeah, thanks, Jim. TAFE continues and will always have a critical role in economic development at any time, but more importantly at this particular time post-COVID. The priority thing for us to do in TAFE Queensland, and a significant role that we play, is to identify the skills and the courses that meet those skills that industry demand and industry need to come out of this post-COVID recession that we're in. And some of the things that we need to do in that particular space, TAFE Directors Australia, Cisco and Optus recently submitted a submission to the federal government around the increase of micro-credentials for digital skills. That's just one part of the opportunity that exists in relation to micro-credentials, and that's a key factor that TAFE can play, is to develop the necessary micro-credentials and skills required by individuals on a just-in-time basis to respond to the needs of what industry are looking for. So that's a key role that we can play in that particular space. Micro-credentials are going to be essential to keeping the economy running and meeting the skill needs of those industries that are there. The other thing that we really need to do, the role we really need to play, is to listen. We need to listen to the industry contacts that we have, and no more importantly than picking up on the Minister's statement before about doing this at a local level or a place-based approach. And take Queensland in particular, the region that I look after has been heavily involved in the Springfield Skills Alliance, a regional jobs committee, and we've been involved even before it became the Jobs Committee, and we identified back then that it was important to listen to the local industry to meet those particular needs, and it's had great outcomes for us at Springfield. We've had significant growth in the training that we offer at Springfield because we were able to listen and get direct contact and develop the courses necessary for those particular people. We continue to be focused on certain segments of the market, picking up on Bernard's statement around the different levels of education. You know, we need to continue to focus on early school leavers, those people that do leave the school market earlier than what they potentially should, providing the necessary skills to those guys to get them educated beyond that year 9 level is going to be critically important. How do we pick them up early in the piece and intervene and get them the skills that are necessary? Year 12 school leavers. I've got a daughter in year 12 this year, one of those kids in Queensland that has had to go through pre-prep, year 7 in grade 12 and year 7 in high school and COVID in year 12. And their resilience is going to be outstanding. We need to tap into that and make sure that we make them more adaptable as individuals. More importantly, however, there's going to be a lot more displaced workers. That's obvious in the current environment. So we need to be making sure that we can provide the training to those people as needed or just in time, as I said before. And again, that's going to be another critical role that we play.
Thanks very much. So how many numbers do you think would have increased given your very innovative approach in terms of your region?
At Springfield?
Yeah.
In particular,
Yep.
At Springfield in particular, we've now got over 1920. We've had over 1,000 students per year at our Springfield campus. It's not one of our largest campuses in our region. That's come up around about 20% on previous numbers the previous few years. So it's really been a great result for us, and we continue to focus in that way to ensure that we meet the needs of Springfield. We're bursting at the seams at our campus at Springfield, and it's a great place to be.
Thanks for that. Let's now move to Steve Elston, of course, who is the chairman of the Internet of Things. So let me kick it off, Steve, and ask you, where do you see the Internet of Things going next? Steve? Have you unmuted yourself there? Okay, while I'm waiting for Steve, I might switch to Rhys Banks, who is, of course, the CEO for Regional Development Australia, Ipswich and West Moreton, and chairman of the Springfield Jobs Committee. Rhys.
Thank you, Jim. Just want to just a bit of context. Regional Development Australia is an Australian government federally funded agency, and the Springfield Regional Jobs Committee is a Queensland government funded program. And as Brent mentioned earlier, we've been going for about 3 years before being able to receive some funding from Minister Fentiman to expand this program. I just want to reiterate just exactly what Bernard said earlier when we first started this idea. So Springfield has roughly 45,000 people. It also has, compared to the state average, more people who completed grade 12, more people with qualifications. It has a higher personal income. It has a higher family income. And as the March quarter, it had a lower unemployment rate. So just backing up exactly what Bernard said, the higher your education standard goes, the higher your wage goes, which just perfectly makes sense. What we've done with the Jobs Committee is actually focus on the place-based. So instead of having a 10,000 metre overview, we've actually had a 100 metre overview. So each area has its own culture, its own traditions, its own industries, the way it operates. So we worked with Jobs Queensland with their anticipating skills future program and worked out through their data what are the top 10 jobs into the future. Now, admittedly, this was before the virus, so they're updating the program now. But still, there are still massive amounts of opportunity and jobs in education and health and in IT in our region. So what we have been trying to do is that it takes 4 years to become a primary school teacher or a high school teacher. So if you start your course now, in 4 years' time, you'll qualify as a teacher. So how many jobs will there be in teaching in that region? So we know there will be a lot. So what we've been trying to do is focus, put the focus on not only just training and being educated, but actually being training and educated in the jobs that you are kind of guaranteed to get in your place. For example, Greater Springfield. So they will need more teachers, they will need more nurses, they will need more age and disability carers, they will need more child carers. So if they do those courses in those degrees, you're kind of guaranteed to get a job where you are educated and where you live. So that is kind of what we've been focusing on. And the other one I just want to mention too, we also did, as Brent mentioned earlier, we went out and did the industry workshops with the Alliance and figure out what are their workforce planning into the future. So what other jobs they will need into the future and what other skills they will require. And what we've been trying to do now and what we've been doing is actually communicating through that through the area and through the Greater Springfield. And if I can just reiterate of how important, Brent mentioned this earlier, having somebody in student in grade 12, of how important it is to actually talk to your family, teachers or mentors of actually what you want to do into the future. I think having family conversations over what you want to do and having the, just having those roundtable conversations at home over, I want to go into this course, and actually having some adults or some people actually guide you through, because it actually takes a whole family or carers to actually educate the child. So you just, like, people do it on their own, yes, but it's a lot easier if the whole family is actually committed to actually educating children into the right courses in your area. So we've been trying to produce material that makes it easier for children to actually understand, if I do this course, what are the chances of me getting a job and how much will I earn? And as Bernard said, the higher you go up, the higher your money goes up. And personally, we pushed our children to go into certain courses, into health and into education, knowing full well that they are kind of guaranteed to get a job once they finish. So that's what we've been focusing on in our region. Again, I can just reiterate that it's actually a place-based program. It's actually looking at an area, a very specific area with its own specific way of operates, and what jobs are going to be required in that particular area.
So how would you actually summarize the Springfield Skill Alliance with a place-based approach to skills investment?
It's just collaboration. We have TAFE Queensland, USQ, a Springfield City Group, Jobs Queensland, Greater Springfield Chamber of Commerce.
Plugged it in, I can hear the
right. Multicultural Australia. Yeah, so it was actually a collaboration. So instead of just taking the advice of one or two people, we actually went out and researched through the whole region, and everybody has a say in it. So everybody has their own strengths in the region. We now have Mater Hospital, we have Springfield Central High School. So we have lots of avenues to actually get information out and to collect information back to actually understand how a community is working and how that community will work into the future.
Okay, thanks for that. Is Steve, are you back on? Can you hear me? Can you talk?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, Steve. That's great. I was just, my question to you was, where do you see the Internet of Things going next?
In the first instance, I see that there will be a defined area between a closed IoT and an open IoT. And what I mean by that is that there will be an Internet of Things that would be enclosed within a business or organisation, industry or whatever it might be, or there'll be an open IoT where it is open to the rest of the world. So everything would be landed through via the World Wide Web. So, for instance, in a factory sense, then the business that is being run wouldn't want its competitors knowing what data it's gathering or what it's actually doing. So there'd be a little bit of commercial in confidence areas there. I think we have to remember that the Internet of Things is going to be driven by the end user. People, enterprises, industries, governments, they'll all define a need. We need something to do something else. Now, whether that's through cost reduction, production improvement or lifestyle changes or maintenance activities, they will define a need, and it will come up to the data analyst, the business analyst, who will start to look at solutions. Now, right now, I know that we have got robotic vacuum cleaners, but why don't we lay smart carpet that's got the sensors in it already that will then communicate to the vacuum cleaner of how dirty it is or where the wine has been spilled, to go and clean it, to call it out and clean it, instead of us going and turning on a button. So we don't want that sort of information, or we don't need to have that information spread across the World Wide Web. We might need that just within our own home environment or run through your phone. I can see that the IoT area is going to be very, very broad in what it picks up. And one of the things that you've got to remember is that the Internet of Things is not a new thing. It's quite old. One of the first areas was Coca-Cola, who built a Coca-Cola machine, and that was back in '82, where that machine could then report back to the vending company that it was all the drinks were cold, or it needed more stock, and what have you, or whether the coin tray was full. So the thought of it is not new. But what we do have that is new is that there is a far more rapid uptake of those items. I was talking to a fellow from Woolworths just recently, who have now identified all of their assets, from freezer units to cool rooms to the chicken cookers, and they are now currently retrofitting all of those assets with devices that can then report back on the data on whether there are temperature spikes, on whether the compressor in a cool room is breaking down. So it's coming from where a perceived need is getting there. So once you find that you've got a need for something, you will create what you need to do to fix it.
So in that context, how will smart industries and the Internet of Things impact specifically upon skilling and training?
What we're going to find is that the electricians, telecommunications technicians, to be honest, I got sick of writing those words out so many times, so I'm going to call that person the electech for the time being, until somebody comes up with another name. But they will need a new toolbox. Now that toolbox will contain cross skills for each discipline, plus it may contain commissioning skills, data analysis, interpretation, may contain design skills, software configuration, cyber security, or maintenance skills, all rolled into one. But one thing it will definitely contain, and if it's not there already, it will have to be there for the future, and that is customer-centric soft skills. These people that are out there will need to understand exactly what they're going to provide their clients. Where that job is going to be for the electech in the future, again, that's probably a little bit of guesswork at this point, but the skilling is going to have to be very agile. It was interesting and gratifying, great to hear Brent Kinane mention micro accreditations. I think that that is part of the future, not the future, but it is definitely part of it. We have skill sets, we have qualifications, micro credentials, we have vendor accreditations as well rolled into it. And these sort of things are going to need to be very agile. They're going to need to be able to switch, to change, to make moves. Brent also mentioned resilience in our young people, and I made a quick note of that, is that our young people that are coming out of COVID-19 are going to be more resilient. It's one thing I hadn't thought of until he mentioned it, but those younger people coming out of that now will have resilience built into them, probably in a way that our great-grandfathers came out of, or great-grandparents came out of the Spanish flu, that they were more resilient to that to that illness. What we're going to find is that our younger people now are resilient to to the world and what's going to happen. They're far more adaptable in how they're going to change. So the other areas that you might find is that smart systems manufacturers will offer skills and training or accreditations for their own systems. We see that already, where people wish to have plug and play. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a plug and play attitude towards it, but if it breaks, you want somebody out there to fix it. And you're not really fussed whether that person, what their base skills are. You're not worried about that at all. What you're concerned with is that they can fix your item. They can get it done now. So we will see things like the gig economy come into play, where there will be some of the most highly skilled workers around the place, because they will be constantly out there learning what to do with Smith and Company's widgets or Jones and Company's widgets. But one of the things we do have to remember is that the base skills exist right now. The electrician, the telecommunications technician, their base skills are there. But we're going to need bigger and better toolboxes for them so that they can actually start to get a handle on what is required. Now, what this is going to mean for the smart industry is that they've got to become a lot broader and notice that, yep, we need more of this, we need better of this to get our guys up and running and being able to do what we need them to do. Now, I'm not going to go into specific skills, but we're going to find that data analysts will emerge, I should say, out of this, because there's going to be a massive amount of data around the place. Data storage firms, there's going to be a greater need for them. And quite frankly, I don't think Iceland is big enough to be able to cope with it. And it's a growing market there. Industry itself will fall back to a basic, that when buying or investing in something new, they'll find something that will do what they want it to do. They'll find out what it can do, find out what its warranty is and what its maintenance plan will be. Now, that's the basics of it. Now, whether this is an Internet of Things printer that going into an office that automatically can talk to any device within the office once it's connected, or if it's within a factory setup or a home setup or an agricultural setup or healthcare. Every item that's going to be out there is going to be trained in this element. We can look at defence at the moment, because defence is actually well ahead of this in that it is constantly training people in newer and faster items. So that's where we take it from. But I think we've got to look at what we've got in the future and look at how resilient we're going to be, how agile we're going to be, and how we can adapt to change. By the way, they're my 3 words.
Yeah, okay, we'll come back to that at the end of the session. But thanks very much for that. Very, very comprehensive. And I know Springfield City is already looking at more data centers, green data centers, looking at very innovative defense as well. So let me, I noticed in one of the comments from the registration, from our registrants is, why don't we call it power skills instead of soft skills? Good point. Let me now go to our next panelist, and that's, of course, Catherine O'Sullivan. She's the CEO of RMIT Training. She's had a career where she's experienced learning, schooling, skilling, and work, which is really great. She understands the whole life cycle, and with a great contributor in this area, and knows Queensland very well. I will hand over to Catherine with the first question, and that is, in the context of this post-COVID-19 world, clearly some of those implications outlined by Minister Cash and Bernard Salt, how are we best able to use imagination to share new ideas and perspectives, particularly to improve our skills? Over to you, Catherine.
Well, thanks very much, Jim. When you first invited me to come along, and I said, remember, even though I'm CEO of RMIT Training, my business is actually international students, and I am in Melbourne. But I think this is an interesting way for Jim to model actually how innovation can take place. And I'm very much an advocate for thinking about diverse ways of thinking and bringing that together. And just listening to what we've heard today, I can see some really common themes about learner attributes. But I'm wondering if I'm sort of working in a different universe at the moment, because obviously I'm working from home, but my staff are in Melbourne. I normally would have 3,500 international students pathwaying through my college. And of course, at the moment, I'm a little bit like the pilots without a plane. And so I think the absolute urgency to create radical innovation has impacted the way I'm thinking. And so listening to today's conversation, I think that what we're going to have as an opportunity out of post-COVID is actually the new education paradigm and the new way to learn. And so whilst I can hear you talking very strongly about this place-based piece, the really significant learning that I've had to date through COVID is how we have actually opened up to global learning opportunities, and how we've actually been able to, I guess, focus and nuance our learning in new and critical ways by using technology. So when I think about, being at a university, I think for a long time we've talked about what the opportunities could be in higher education if we were able to use technology in the way that it's been designed, if we were going to fully optimize its use. The other thing is that we've been talking about stackable degrees, micro-credentials, how we could actually do short courses that were more targeted towards what the skill development was that was required in this whole notion of lifelong learning. And that is exactly what has happened. So the higher education sector in particular has undergone such a radical transformation in this short period of time since March. And those things are now a reality. So I know last year pre-COVID at RMIT, there were 40,000 micro-credentials distributed to students who are enrolled at the university. It's become part of our DNA to actually offer those micro-credentials. But now to move into much more targeted online courses that are nuanced around what are the new skill needs is becoming what the future of learning can look like. But it doesn't also mean that it's necessarily going to be place-based or place-centric. I think we're going to move into a really strong expert model. So if I think about this at the moment with our own courses that we're actually providing, we are teaching to students in the Northern Hemisphere. We've got people actually working in completely different time cycles to what we are at the moment. We've had to create, to buy a new VPN to ensure that students who were learning in certain countries actually had a stable platform to be able to learn from the platform that we were using. We've experimented with lots of platforms. So I feel like we're really at the beginning phase of our imagination, Jim. We reimagined quite quickly and we pivoted quite quickly. And if you look at universities as large institutions that are in many cases dual sector offering vet and higher education, it would have seemed sort of 2 years ago to actually conceive that they would be able to transform everything that they were doing in a face-to-face environment, to move online in 2 weeks and to do that successfully, to me demonstrates sort of the latent power that is actually sitting there in organisations and large bureaucracies, where if we trust and empower people to create change, then they can do it, and they can do it quite quickly. So I actually think COVID is going to stretch our imagination about how education is going to be delivered, how it's going to be much more partnered with industry, providing opportunities for students, whether they're young people, as Bernard said, in that 14 to 24-year age group, or whether in fact they're sort of in their early 40s and having to pivot quite quickly now because their jobs have gone. And it seems to me that what COVID has taught us is that nothing is static, nothing is predictable. But if we have those core attributes that we've all agreed about today, being able to be resilient, being able to be entrepreneurial, innovative, to communicate, to collaborate, if we can have all of those skills, and then we can provide this nuanced, targeted learning in bite-sized modules, in short courses, I mean, the reality is you can be learning from anywhere around the world at the moment and be having access to the most incredible speakers. So even if I reflect on today's seminar, to be able to get both Bernard and Senator Cash here together and to be able to put that out to, you know, many hundreds of people, think about what the actual sort of cumbersome opportunity that would be for a conference where we had to travel and have our accommodation and all the expenses that are incurred with that. That's not going to be the case anymore. We will have this plethora of opportunities where collectively we can actually experience the one speaker and take that away and take those skills away. And just on a very minor sort of example, I guess, of how I feel that these global opportunities are opening up, we had a very small online graduation for 250 of our international students at the end of June, July, and we had a virtual graduation. Very unusual because RMIT does amazing big graduation. So we had this small sort of virtual graduation, which was done in partnership with our students. We put that online for 2 weeks. During that 2-week time period, 3,500 individual page views of that graduation occurred. And we had a reach out. We could tell country by country who looked at that graduation. And interestingly, 35% of people who looked at that were actually from America. What was that telling us? Was it international students wanting to leave America? Was it our international students having families in America? All of a sudden, all of this data that's coming up through your own ability to create online opportunities is going to give Bernard a whole lot of new opportunities to think about what that data is telling us about our demographics. But also being able to access the best and the brightest is going to be, I think, if anything, COVID has actually accelerated that change that we dreamt about and is actually making it a reality.
So, Catherine, in this context, do you need to more highly value innovation and creativity as essential qualities of our work and resources for the economy and society?
Well, you know, it's a fascinating question because I think we've been talking about innovation now and the fact that it's going to be the you know, sort of the absolute enabler of our economy for about 5 years. But it had very limited traction on the wider community. People kept hearing this word innovation and it felt like, you know, Joe Blow didn't understand what innovation meant. But I think through COVID, we have experienced firsthand what innovation meant. And if that was as simple as our local restaurant, our sort of a la carte restaurant, all of a sudden being able to offer meals partially cooked and delivered to your front door, and you were all of a sudden an a la carte cook, then I think that demonstrates all of the things that have happened during COVID and how quickly people have pivoted, have demonstrated why innovation is so important and possibly will give us some more confidence that that we can actually teach innovation, that we can teach entrepreneurship, and that those skills are going to be here in a job market that's continually evolving. And so when we looked at Bernard's graph that showed us the jobs post-COVID and the jobs pre-COVID, we could see how quickly that had changed in 12 months. What's going to happen again in the next 12 months? So this notion of actually training and skilling people for hard-line careers, I mean, we've been talking about it being over ever since I started work 35 years ago as a school teacher. So I think we know that that's happened, but COVID has actually demonstrated it to us. And it's also demonstrated to us more than ever that imagination and creativity are going to be so important. But having imagination and creativity working alongside commercial minds, Jim, and you've always been someone who's really, you were one of the first, I think, to architect this notion of how design teams could be brought together, having people with different experiences and different ways of thinking to create solutions that maybe you were never going to create if you had the same thinkers who'd done the same job, who'd worked in the same industry. So bringing outside in is going to be such a critical part of being able to create this, this sense of innovation that we need.
Thanks very much, Catherine. That's very well articulated. As we go to the wrapping up of this excellent webinar, let me turn to Bernard Salton. Perhaps, Bernard, what's your reflection on all the panelists and their comments? What comments would you like to offer?
Well, I'm very pleased with the focus on adaptability, and no one picked up on my word fit inability, because I think there is no such word. We need to scour Germany. I think there must be a German word meaning fit inability, and what I mean by it is when things go pear-shaped, when there's a real challenge on, can you adapt your skills to the moment and bob up like a bobbing cork in troubled waters? And I suppose that is resilience by another name, or adaptability. Determination might be another. But again, I saw that as a common theme right throughout. I think I was very pleased also to see so many people pick up on that riveting chart of mine about income earning across the life cycle correlated with skills or education levels. So not just university education, but technical and trade education as well. Actually, when I look at that and look at the data that it's based on, I actually don't think it's entirely fair to the vocational training sector, because someone who starts out as a plumber or electrician or a carpenter, by the time they fill out the census in their 50s, might actually describe themselves as something different, like a managing director or a business owner or something like that. So again, you can see the link between business skills, learning a trade, learning skills, becoming educated early in life, and leveraging that to your advantage and to the advantage of the nation later on. So yes, adaptability, fit inability, and if anyone has got a term to describe that from another language, please direct message me, and so I can nick it and claim it as my own.
Thanks, Bernard. In fact, that's a good lead into my final question that I'm going to ask each of our panelists, and that is, share with us, all of us who are listening to this webinar, 3 key words that would best summarize this special webinar event. So, Bernard, while you're in that frame of mind, I'll ask you the 3 words you would select.
Fit inability. So that's one. Entrepreneurship. There can be no jobs of the future without businesses of the future. And the third one is application. There's a lot of people who talk about working smarter, not harder. What if you work smart and hard? Then you'll be extraordinarily successful, I think.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Brent Kinane, what would your 3 words be?
Thanks, Jim. I picked up on Bernard's adaptability as one of the key factors that we need to be looking at. Investment, and that's not only government investment in skills and training, that's our own investment as industry and our own investment as individuals and parents of our kids. Invest in the future skills and needs of our children and ourselves. And I like Catherine's word, reimagine. I think that's something that's really stuck with me, how we're going to reimagine and vocational training in particular.
Thanks, Brent. Rees Banks, how about you?
I think resilience, which has come up a lot, which I think, as been mentioned earlier before, I think that will show in years to come of actually how people have become resilient and can to adapt. That was my second word. And the other one was just learn. Continue learning.
Those are very good choice of words. Donna, what are your 3 words?
Yeah, sorry, mine is similar. I think adaptability is very important. Agility, the ability to be able to reimagine work and pivot effectively. And coming from a healthcare industry, I think resilience for organisations and for learners and for the workforce. That's important for the future.
Thanks for that. Catherine, your 3 words?
I think, first of all, creativity, because we've certainly been forced into being creative at the moment. Innovation, definitely, it's going to be something that will be ongoing. And my third one is collaboration, because I think it's actually going to be through collaboration, through partnerships, through discussions that we will actually come to some solutions around some of these really, really significant issues that we're going to be facing post-COVID in terms of the economy. So.
Thank you. Steve Elston, your 3 words.
Thanks, Jim. Look, the technician of the future, and that's really what this person is going to be, need to have skills agility. They need to be able to be adaptable, open, and agile.
Okay, those are very good. I mean, I think we've shared a really good set of words from skills innovation, some new words that we should bring into the vocabulary. And before I now start to do the final wrap up, I'll ask our guest speaker again, Bernard Salt, having reflected particularly on Minister Cash and looking at Springfield and nation building project. What words would you use to describe the potential of this city in Springfield?
Well, I've had a long relationship with Springfield over many years, and I most certainly do see it as an opportunity to create a suburban Australian experience for the future that is bold, that is ambitious, and that is driven by aspiration. And I actually see a common denominator between Maha Sinnathamby, the head of the Springfield group, and the Minister Cash. The thing they have in common is that they are irrepressibly passionate and effervescent and confident about the future. And I think that's what you need to create something. You can't be passive. You've got to be out there. You've got to put yourself in. You've got to be passionate. And that is what I think we all need a bit more of in order to create the Australia and the Springfield of the future.
Thanks very much, Bernard. That's for those words. And I'd also like to draw to everyone's attention that Minister Cash has also brought to our attention a media release that she's bringing out in relation to job-ready graduates will power the economic recovery. So you might want to have a look at that. That'll be up very shortly. As I wrap up this webinar, we're right on time, which is very good. I would like to thank our speakers. They've been excellent today, both Minister Cash and Bernard Salt, provided a really good policy context, a good look at the future with some very practical advice on how to move ahead. I'd also like to thank each of our panelists, Donna from the Marta Group. And Donna, we're really looking forward to seeing the public hospital in Springfield in the very near future and power up that education even further. Catherine O'Sullivan, who is a multi-skilled, only shared part of her very broad understanding here of a range of the issues we're facing today. Reece Banks, I think it's just great to see you bring in that Regional Development Australia approach and the Westmorton and bring in the Springfield Regional Jobs groups together. That's a really good achievement with the Springfield Skills Alliance and the Regional Jobs Committee. Steve Elston, I think, the Internet of Things is really very, very important. Your comments there were very, very perceptive and incisive. I think we're all looking forward to listening to them again. And Brett Kinane, look, as a former Director General that oversight at TAFE, I can see that it still continues its very important role to play in the state's economic recovery. And I'm very pleased to see the innovation that you are doing. So can I take this opportunity then to thank our speakers and panelists, but can I also thank the owners of Springfield, Dr. Maha Sinnathamby, who is a innovator and always uses the term education and training is the currency of the future, which is absolutely right, and his business partner, Bob Sharpless, both of whom are really committed to making the city of Springfield, an engine driver, an economic engine driver for Queensland and the nation. Can I also thank our education team in Springfield City Group, Dr. Richard Eden, Mira Honan, Sophia Arkanstal, and of course, supported by the marketing team with Nadine Probar, Stephanie, and Narendran Sinnathamby. Thanks to all of them. And thanks, of course, once again to the Springfield City Group and the Springfield Regional Jobs Committee for co-hosting this event. Thank you all and have a wonderful rest of the day. And I've given you an extra 5 minutes to reflect. Thank you very much.